It's time for a fabulous keynote address. So we're talking about good growth, and it's truly an honor to invite on stage Mr. Adam Gerhart, Global CEO, Mindshare. I'll request you all to kindly welcome him with a humongous round of applause.
Of course, Adam will start once the screen starts working, but please give Mr. Adam Gerhart a big round of applause. He's the Global CEO for Mindshare, and he spent almost 2 decades with this organization. Also, Mr. Amin Lakhani and Mr. Prashant Kumar and many senior colleagues from the group are there, from the WPP group are here. So welcome to you. So Adam is a big guy, leads the world's largest media services company. So really we are honored and delighted that Adam is here. Please give him a big round of applause. He should feel welcome.
Thank you. Certainly I didn't warrant 3 rounds of applause, but I appreciate it. You did have it a moment ago. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Good? All set now? All right, thank you. Sorry for that. Thank you first and foremost for having me. I love being here. And while I've written speeches for people at E4M, I've never had the honor of actually presenting at one. So for me, I'm humbled to be here with you. As we think about growth in the future, there's no question there are compounding pressures facing every single business out there, no matter what sector you're in, no matter what category you're in. But the very idea of growth is being called into question on a daily basis. More and more, it's about how we reconcile the needs of numerous stakeholders, whether you're the consumer, whether you are the environment or the ecosystem, whether you're a media owner, whether you're an agency partner, most of all, and more importantly these days, whether you are actually a shareholder. The needs of all of those stakeholders are often at odds. So how do we in the future start to reconcile those and become more inclusive, more equitable in the way in which we approach growth? So to do that, we have to reimagine the way in which we view growth in the future. Perfect. So growth used to be driven by geography, moving into new markets, reaching new audiences. It was as simple as that. I don't need to tell anyone in this room that it was the fundamental on which all good businesses grew and thrived. But in an age and an era dominated by the platforms, that ecosystem has radically changed and evolved. Platforms today have completely broken down the sales funnel. They've collapsed it entirely, and they've given new power to consumers in new ways to define themselves, to create, to shape other people's influences, and to change the very world around them. That has changed the very nature of growth. Everything is faster and moving with a velocity we've never seen before. It's also required more transparency from brands, more authenticity from businesses, and it's empowered consumers to take control in ways that we haven't seen before. Platforms these days have all of the control and the power, and they're enabling that for the consumers as well. So the challenge really is businesses have to adapt. In today's world, they're either being born from platform ecosystems or they're evolving into platform ecosystems. Take, for example, IHG versus Booking.com or Ford versus Tesla. One is being born into this new era, and one has to transform radically. And that's because the rules of growth have fundamentally changed. They've given rise to new economies, new routes to market, and consumers are now calling all of the shots. It's why businesses today are failing at a faster rate than ever before. So, how do we need to start to think about it in the future? Well, first of all, you're probably questioning whether or not growth fundamentally has changed. You need to look no further than these 3 charts. First of all, the time between innovation and adaptation is radically down to less than 5 years. The second is margin volatility is up 3x versus what it ever has been historically. And third, and arguably most importantly, the connection between scale and profitability has virtually disappeared. Growth is fundamentally different in every way and shape. So what do we do about it, and how do we think about it? Growth has not only changed, but in the future, not all growth is created equal. And that may sound provocative, and it's intended to be, because everyone will define growth differently based on their business and their objectives. For some, D2C is far more important than brick and mortar. For others, short-term sales and conversion is more important than long-term equity. And yet still, some will prioritize brand and lifetime value over the immediate quarter's results. Those tensions are constantly at odds. So how do we start to reconcile those in a meaningful way? Growth has to be defined for every single business. And as we start to think about it, what it means is that growth actually, as we evolve, can have unintended consequences in three primary ways. The first is, if we're not careful, it can radically erode trust between consumers and businesses, either by misuse of data, poor experiences, bad media inventory. The list goes on and on. The second, we can encourage short-termism at the expense of long-term. That one needs no explanation. The third one, though, is it can have detrimental consequences to society or the world around us. This is the single biggest threat when it comes to things like DEI or the world and the ecosystem around us. And we have to adapt. But in the age of good growth, using media and marketing with intention can actually benefit all stakeholders in that ecosystem. Consumer, stakeholder, consumer, shareholder, whether you are the ecosystem or the society around us, all of those can be brought to bear. And really, there's three ways. One is it can create lasting and enduring connections. The second is it can create trust with your business in the long term. Most of all, actually acting with intent can create support of the world around us, whether it's the environment, whether it's DEI, whether it's responsible journalism. All of those are critical foundations to new apertures of growth. So, as we start to think about using media and marketing with intention, it allows us to actually resolve some of those tensions that we face as marketers, brands, and businesses in the future. Those tensions are things that all of us face. It can resolve a tension that creates growth that lives beyond a single moment, meaning it's enduring growth. That is good growth. It can resolve the tension between demand generation and long-term brand building. In other words, it can live beyond a single sale. It's sustainable. It can resolve the tension between what's happening in platform ecosystems and how we think about CLV in the long run. In other words, it can be much more diverse. Good growth in the future is all three of those. It is enduring, sustainable, and diverse. But we have to work at it, and that is the challenge in reconciling all three of those tensions. So good growth in the future, as we start to think about its very redefinition and the way in which it manifests itself for businesses in the new platform ecosystem economy, it can actually satiate all of the stakeholders. For our clients and their businesses, enduring, diverse, and sustainable growth. For consumers, more responsive brands and businesses that are actually investing in them and showing up authentically the way that they want to be represented. For the industry, it creates a more sustainable ecosystem, whether you're media owner, whether you're agency, whether you're the consumer at the receiving end. And most importantly, for all of us in here, it creates growth that is more meaningful to all of us as individuals. So, as we think about the future, I just want to leave you with one or two thoughts. We have to intentionally think of growth in a very different way. We are all architects of growth, but what it means for each one of us will be radically different depending on the space in which we play and the emphasis with which we put on those four areas. So, when we think of good growth and not just growth, it allows us to resolve all four of those tensions for all four of those constituents. That essentially becomes the era of good growth. Now, that can seem like a very ambiguous concept for many because the notion of growth doesn't need much explanation, but I've just shown you how it can actually mean different things to different constituents depending on where you sit in the ecosystem. What we wanted to do is actually show you how that comes to life through a couple of examples and a couple of case studies. So I think with that, I just wanted to leave you with the notion that growth for all of us today is being redefined, and every single day it's being questioned, whether you are consumer, stakeholder, shareholder, investor, you name it. The challenge is how do we actually find growth that is enduring, diverse, and sustainable to support all of our businesses in the future. Thanks. Good. Now we're going to share some examples that doesn't seem so esoteric.
You're meticulous. You are a certain sunshine that you share with Mr. Lakhani, so they are meticulous people. But I think you pulled it off, and I'll take up from where you left. Adam, why don't you sit there? Let me come to the theme of the session, which is good growth, theme of the conclave. And let me also start by congratulating you for Mindshare was named the Media Network of the Year at 2023. It's a big deal considering the kind of competition you have. So,
Thank you.
now, you already outlined what is changing in the consumer landscape, how technology is changing, how platforms are taking control, how the creator economy is playing its bit in this. But give us a sense of being the largest player in the media services play, working with a diverse set of clients, right from very marquee brand names and businesses that have been around for many years, and startups in technology, then collaborating with media platforms to deliver solutions. Tell us, how are media agencies, especially your own agency, is changing itself to be relevant? You are a leader, you continue to be leader in India. So clearly you're doing something to be able to get the client's attention, time, and money.
First of all, thank you for the nod to our Cannes win. I think that speaks to where the industry is going, actually. If we take a step back and start to look at the trends and the ecosystem in which we're operating, we have to understand the macro environment first, where media and marketing used to all be about scale. That scale eventually evolved into precision. It was about reaching the appropriate number of individuals with as minimal waste as possible. And it isn't one versus the other, but it's an evolution. That scale to precision eventually evolved into permission. How do we actually talk to consumers in a meaningful way without being intrusive or disruptive? The interesting thing, though, is that we've gone from scale to precision to permission to now prediction, where the future is actually not going to be defined by any one of those first three. It's going to be defined by the businesses, the brands, the agencies, the consultants who can actually predict meaningful outcomes for businesses better than anyone else. And you do that by understanding consumers in an incredibly insightful way, by understanding culture, by understanding them through the lens of DEI. And I think it means for us as an agency, the ecosystem that we play in means that the services that we offer, the capabilities that we bring to bear are incredibly different. And all the time they're evolving. And I know we have a couple of examples, and I thought the first one to probably share around this is one called Impact Index. It's the second video, and it's really illustrative of how we're using things like artificial intelligence and machine learning to reach and support diverse communities who may be marginalized because we aren't talking to them in a meaningful way. So if we could play that.
Let's see the video.
Second.
Brand safety is a critical part of every marketer's playbook. But what about human safety? Media shapes opinions. Opinions inform individual behaviors, and those behaviors influence culture. If we fund journalism that is negative or toxic towards a particular community, our media buys are contributing to biases, and that makes marginalized communities vulnerable. But what could we do about it? Working with a startup and our client Tyson Foods, who had pledged to invest more of their media dollars into diverse publishers, we developed an AI-based tool to assess the human safety of our digital media. We specifically trained it to understand biased media depictions of the Black community because we know such depictions have negative repercussions on the community as a whole. We call this tool the Impact Index. It works like this. The Impact Index combs articles in our media mix and across the web, assessing and quantifying their human impact on the Black community. It makes domain-level decisions on page-level data, ranking individual news articles on a scale from positive impact to neutral, negative, and finally, toxic impact on the Black community. We can then optimize our media spend toward positive impact sources, allowing our media dollars to do the most good. Right away, the Impact Index uncovered startling insights. It found many local news sites boosted the signal of negative news pertaining to the Black community. Meanwhile, lifestyle sites boosted positive stories, but often with limited impact. Using this tool, we adjusted our investment and increased Tyson's media volume on positive impact sites by 20%. And we doubled the amount of brand engagements versus historical benchmarks. With paid media and AI, we began creating a safer internet for the Black community, increasing brand performance along the way.
Thank you. I wish we can do this in India. Practically, very few news media may qualify to get any advertising on impact, but ABP may qualify. And that's not a plug, I really, as a viewer, say that. But that's very good. That's, at an Exchange for Media conclave, talking to a former Mindshare CEO, I said if media agencies started putting, I said at the conclave, PK, you were there, that if they started putting pressure on the news publishers, news broadcasters, on the kind of content they put out and its impact, then you can save the world, you can save our country, so to say. But I'm glad you're doing this in the US.
It's based on AI, which means it's entirely scalable right now. And one of the things that if we're really honest amongst ourselves, the ability for AI to transform news and journalism is going to change radically when it means everyday influencers all of a sudden have access to tools that can produce content at rapid scale without the need to fact check, without the need to have credible sources or anything of the sort. We need to have more means for checking journalism and the integrity of what's being published out there, and this is just one of the steps in doing it.
Beautiful. I mean, again, the kind of content you support, at the end of the day, it's about personalization you talked about, and really the positive impact of the kind of content and then the messaging, the writing on that content. So it's right. Now let me come back to the theme. We've been talking about good growth. You started talking about how to win customers with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, again, in Mindshare, you've been at the forefront of fostering diversity and inclusion with initiatives such as the Inclusion Private Marketplace. Give us a sense of what is the Inclusion Private Marketplace?
So it's very similar to this. What we've done is essentially work with some of the leading publishers around the world to create and source inventory that allows us to redirect investment dollars into publications that can support and champion underrepresented voices. So in America, it was creating a private marketplace that supported Black voices. In Australia, we did it for Indigenous people. In the UK, we created a private marketplace that supported LGBTQ rights. And so we're redirecting dollars away from the big publishers that would otherwise just capture those dollars and aren't necessarily advancing the ecosystem by supporting those marginalized groups. So we're investing directly our clients' money into spaces and places that champion underrepresented communities.
Fantastic. I think that if it happens in India, it will definitely create a certain kind of impact. You talked about in your presentation about the role of data. You gave insights, and right just now you talked about the role of artificial intelligence in making the kind of decisions you make in media. Tell us, as an agency, as a services play, what are the broader aspects of the business that are getting reshaped in terms of the services you offer? How is it, you alluded it in my first, as an answer to my first, but how are you broadening the base of services that you're offering at Mindshare?
Yeah, so I think first of all, it really centers around the notion that data is in everything that we do. Increasingly, it is the liquid gold that will fuel everything. And we fundamentally believe that the planners, the strategists, and the innovators of tomorrow are being born out of the data strategists today. Those data strategists will have unique insights to allow us to connect with consumers in more meaningful ways. And that means that we have to be the best masters of our clients' data, our own data, third-party data, whatever the case may be. And what that's doing is allowing us to elevate the type of conversation that we are having, moving well beyond media. And I'll give you just one example. We work with an auto client in another market, and we had been doing some modeling for the client, and COVID hit. And the client came to us and said, your models are actually more predictive of our sales, even during this tumultuous time. We were forecasting to within a 3% delta of their sales, despite chip shortages, despite supply chain issues. They said, we actually want to use your models, not our own, in how we forecast and source rubber for our tires. And so all of a sudden, the decisions that we were making around media seeped into marketing. That marketing seeped into sales. That sales seeped into brand. And all of a sudden, we were having a conversation with the CFO, not the CMO. And the CFO was coming to us saying, how much can I move off the line at the highest margin based on the chips that I have available? How many tires do I need to buy? How much rubber do I need to source from a raw goods material sourcing? And I think that really speaks to where we are trying to go as an agency. Much broader, much more strategic in terms of upstream consulting and capabilities, pushing into commerce, pushing into MarTech deployment, pushing into data and analytics. And I think the convergence of media, marketing, analytics, customer experience, commerce, all of those things mean that agencies have to have a much broader, more diverse range of services.
Fantastic, and I can, knowing what your business is doing here, I believe what you are saying, and I know what you're doing. Now, Adam, this is not your first trip to India.
No.
Of course, you made your first trip to Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
You come here multiple times, both to Delhi and Bombay. What has changed about India in the last couple of years, which is to you significant, and what has changed specifically in the media market? Tell the audience how has, in your view, you're an insider outsider.
Yeah.
I mean, you are
Yeah.
of course, you're the global CEO, but you don't run the India ops in the sense daily. How has the India operations kept pace with that?
So I think there's two big things. First of all, there's what's happening from a cultural standpoint, and then there's what's happening from a business standpoint. If I think of the culture of what's happening here, the last trip that I had was pre-COVID, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and what I'm seeing now is there's an energy that I haven't experienced before, and I've been here well over a dozen times in the last couple of years. And that energy, I think, is creating a velocity that we haven't seen, that I haven't seen in coming here. And there's no question that, India is poised for greatness. The growth, the GDP alone is outpacing the global GDP by 2 to 3x. The ad expenditure market is outpacing the global ad expenditure market by 2 to 3x. It is poised to overtake many of the world's largest economies in a matter of years, not decades. And I think you can feel that energy. You can feel that optimism, and certainly from my side, it feels like India's on the cusp of breaking new ground and new territory, and that is permeating every sense of culture. The second thing from a business perspective is exactly what I was just describing. When I came here 4 years ago, it was conversations with CMOs used to be, how many GRPs do I need to have on air each week? Talk to me about the different states that I need to go into. How do I reach new audiences? Now, I can tell you we've met with the biggest auto manufacturer here. We met with 2 of the largest CPG companies here. We've met with a couple of startup D2C companies, and every single one of them is asking about transformation, business transformation and growth transformation. The conversation has radically evolved into not just being about media, but being about how we help support an accelerated growth agenda. And I think that speaks to the first point around the trajectory and the velocity of what's starting to happen.
So would it be fair to say that your offering is much more than a media services offering?
100%.
And it is becoming, if I may say, comparable or better than management consultings who've been trying to get into marketing services?
You said it, I didn't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. So give us a sense of, because clearly over the last 6 to 8 years, the large consulting groups have tried to come into this very important area of marketing services.
Yep.
And you still stayed on top of your game.
Yep.
So tell us what has made that happen? mean,
First-
you already talked about technology. You
Yeah.
talked that you moved into commerce.
I think a big part of it, first of all, we welcome that competition. It keeps us on our toes and it forces us to keep evolving. And when you're the number one in the market like we are, it means that we have to not just look at incremental improvements, but huge step changes in what we're doing. And when I think about the conversations that we are having, the biggest difference is the consultants had very senior level relationships. They're struggling to push down into execution. Whereas we came from a place where every single dollar we invested was scrutinized day in and day out. We were held to account for every single penny that we invested on behalf of our clients. ROI was looked at on a daily, if not hourly basis. We have earned their trust, their confidence, and that is enabling us to push up in a much more productive way while they struggle to push down.
Beautiful. Adam, thank you for being real. I also want to say your group made lots of acquisitions in the last 8 odd years. Over the next 12 to 18 months, do you see you making more acquisitions in India?
I would certainly like to think so. If I think about even partnerships, not even acquisitions, the number of partnerships that we are striking with AI and ML and analytics companies that are based here is at a pace that we have never seen before. And I talked a little bit about the Volvo example and even the Tyson example. Those are being brought about by partners that are here in India that enable more predictive analytics in the future. So I think whether it is acquisition, whether it is partnerships, I can't say right now, but there's no question there will be more investment coming into the market in some capacity.
Media innovation is at the core of what you offer. And you want to show us an example, whatever you talked about. Shall we see that?
Yeah.
So, Razia, can we have the example which is from India?
Yeah, let's the first video.
And then Adam can talk about it. Some of you may have seen it.
I hope so. I would love it.
No, of course, people would have seen it.
Millions of young girls like Sanya are subjected to beauty stereotypes every day, which can impact their self-esteem. A Dove study proved that the biggest test Indian girls face in their school years is the beauty test. With Indians being the youngest to reach mobile maturity globally, these beauty tests have found their way into conversations online with friends, family, and followers. Dove wanted to make the online audience more mindful of their words when speaking to young girls. So we turned the very medium used to body shame them into their first line of defense. Using the predictive AI technology present in smart keyboards, we identified users who are typing body-shaming comments and delivered a thought-provoking message to them before they pressed send. To build this real-time intervention, we analyzed 61 million body-shaming interactions across the internet and identified 3 broad forms of body shaming: color, hair, and size. A contextual message was crafted for each of these forms, thumb-stopping beauty biases at the moment of truth. Clicking on these messages took users to the Dove Self-Esteem Project, a learning hub that offers tools and resources to help build beauty confidence in young girls. In less than a month, this innovation organically delivered Dove's message to millions of people who were caught in the act of conducting their next beauty test. Top media journals took notice and helped us garner over 854 million impressions and 130,000 euros in earned PR. As beauty tests across the country reduced, the brand love grew. This unique intervention directly influenced millions of interactions with young girls, literally stopping beauty tests, one conversation at a time.
Fantastic. Again, great use of technology.
Yeah, I mean, for us, that one is technology, but it is inclusive in every single way. And that, for us, is the very definition of good growth: brand uplift, sales uplift, and new consumers being spoken to in more meaningful ways.
Beautiful. Now, of course, Mindshare is a global network. And each unit in each country is very strong, rooted in the culture, understanding of business nuances. Give us an example of how you could use your scale and your global nature of network to make an impact for a client in every market.
Yeah, so I think this goes back to the culture point, understanding consumers intimately in market. But more and more, part of what is involved in our own evolution of becoming more consultative in nature and offering a broader range of services is also being more agnostic, working with a broader range of partners and being more open and receptive to who we work with and how we partner. There's an amazing example that we have in a video that I think we should probably play the video and then I can show it. But it really speaks to our ability to scale ideas across a network, working in conjunction with other partners. It was an idea that from start to finish took 72 hours, and it won the Grand Prix at Cannes. So if you're all right, we'll play, this is the third video, Turn Your Back.
This Turn Your Back won the Media Grand Prix at Cannes, and as Adam says, it's a great example of how the network.
This is not what I look like right now. This filter should be illegal. Here's the real me. Oh my gosh.
A new beauty trend going viral on TikTok.
What's the filter called again?
Bold glamour. Bold glamour.
Bold glamour.
Bold glamour.
There's practically no way to tell that I've got a filter on. I can move about.
Unlike traditional beauty filters, every pixel on your face is regenerated.
The beautification filter can cause psychological distress.
And I worry about how this impacts young girls' confidence.
It is time to turn our backs against digital distortion. C'est vraiment important de s'assumer comme
ansiedade com a nossa aparência real.
We're not just doing it for our family. We know there's other families, we know there's other kids out here that's watching, that's listening.
The hashtag Turn Your Back is all over TikTok right now.
I'm turning my back to digital distortion.
Turn your back.
Dan la espalda a turn our back.
Encuentro no es necesario.
I'm going to go one better than turning my back on this.
I think these filters are here to hurt us, and I think it's time we turned our back on them.
I don't like it either. You know why? Because it doesn't look like you. There we go.
Beautiful.
So I think, as I was saying, that you talk about scale and how we operate in the future. That was there was a call that went out between Ogilvy and Mindshare. Within 24 hours, we had 200 ideas from 50 countries around the world. Within another 12 hours, it was whittled down to the final two, one of which came from Spain, one of which came from London. Within another 24 hours of that, the client had approved it. We had been influencers and live at the Oscars.
Thank you, Adam. That's the power of collaboration. Speaking collaboration, that's a great example. But today's world is all about, you talked about partnerships earlier on, and however big you may be as a agency or a network, you still need the power of collaboration to multiply the impact and bring in the creativity through cross-pollination. Give us an example of what your agency has done in the last few months to be able to harness the power of partnerships.
Yeah, I think this is where technology itself has a fundamental role to play. Obviously, for us, we're 10,000 people, and we're part of an organization as Group M that is 40,000 people, and we're part of WPP that is 110,000 people. We have to be able to harness through technology, the skill sets, the talent, the passion of all of those individuals, but we have to do it in a meaningful way, and it's really difficult in an organization of that scale to actually do it in a tangible way. I think it comes down to the way in which we operate through our relationships and that sort of thing, but also our values. And for us, values are so critical to how we operate. And we went through an exercise about 18 months ago during the heart of COVID when people were feeling particularly challenged. And we said our values that we had stood for over a decade might need to be refreshed. And so we worked not to identify values that I believed in or our leadership team believed in, but our people believed in, because that is what enables us to mobilize and galvanize an organization of 10,000 people. And so we tasked a number of individuals from all of our markets around the world to put forward what they thought our organizational values should be moving forward. And where we netted out was around three things: energy, empathy, and impact. And those are the three things that we live by day in and day out. Energy is the drive to keep us going. It's the passion to put forward ideas. Impact is about not just being creative or being innovative in what we do, but having meaningful business results for our clients and for consumers that we are serving. And empathy was something at the time the world needed more of and still does. We're all moving far too fast to be able to operate in the way in which we did. We need to every once in a while lift our head up and ask how the person next to us is doing. And those three values underscore everything that we do. And in moments like this, when you have to source ideas from around the world and you can be live in 72 hours, it speaks to those values being lived and breathed every single day.
And thank you so much, Adam. My last question before some of people in the audience may want to ask questions. Adam, you've been around for a long while. Now you lead a very large network. What is your advice to people in the room? People from the advertising backgrounds, from media planning backgrounds, people who own brands, are building businesses, startup founders. Is there a piece of advice for them from you?
I think for me, it's certainly always stay hungry and keep learning. We find that actually the answer is usually out there. And if you listen more than you speak, you'll be able to find it. And the Dove example that we just looked at is a really good example. We asked people what they thought we should do to address this issue of toxicity when it comes to social media and how young girls are being influenced. And that answer came through in hundreds of ways from our own network. So I would say listen to your consumers, and in a world where they are in ultimate control because of platform enablement and what I was talking about at the very beginning, I think that is the biggest way that we can thrive and succeed in the future.
Thank you so much, Adam. Please give Adam Gerhart a big applause. If there are any questions from the audience, we can, and short one, not brief, very short one. Yes, can you get the mic to him? He talked about Dove, so I know you may have got excited again, but...
Thoroughly excited. I've worked with Levers on the launch, so it's a baby brand, and now look how big it's become. I picked up on one point that you mentioned, that you have been working, the recent trip you worked on, met with consumers, customers, brands, startups as well, and the common thing you found is that they're looking for results. And the key subject on this one is good growth. My question as an agency, with this shift towards results for growth, young, hungry startup founders look for growth from a giant that is Mindshare. Would you be looking at fees that are result-oriented for the customer, the potential customer? Would you be looking at that? Because that is a big thing, the cost of customer acquisition, the cost of growth. How would you look at that in the future as you go about partnering with startups like us and many in the room?
Yeah, 100%. The irony of our industry was it was predicated and founded on hours and the number of bodies that you scoped and paid. Those days are gone. Agencies were never incentivized as a direct result of that to be more efficient, to be more productive. I think that era has gone. We need to find ways where we are incentivized based on the performance and the business results of our clients. And we have many clients that we are moving towards where we have shared incentives. We even have some clients in parts of the world where it's 100% outcomes based. That, however, does require true partnership at a level that most clients aren't prepared for. And that's the single biggest challenge. When you're going to do that, you have to lock arms.
Thank you, Adam. I don't think we'll take any more questions. Please give Adam Gerhart a big round of applause. And
thank you.
Srini is also here. So Srini is also clapping. And
Thanks for
also
having me.
Mr. Aman Gupta, who's the founder, Aman built a company which is very large, started in D2C, but is now omni-channel, and Aman makes appearances at events like this after he gets paid $2-3 million. So thank you for giving us a discount, Aman, and being here. Yes. So please give Adam a big round of applause.
Thank you.
I
Thanks
think
for having me.
he answered the question very honestly. The fees are, clients only pay fees when they get value. Nobody pays money to anyone if they don't get value. So if clients continue to pay, one, their businesses are growing. Second, there is a correlation between the services and the growth of the business. So really, and luckily Mindshare has done very well. Maruti is a big account, it's among the biggest accounts, and as Amin said to me that it's not just about the size, it's the prestige with the Maruti account. You know, the legacy, it's India's largest automaker. So Mindshare has done well, Group M has done well, and I'm sure they will continue to do well. I hope next time you're here in India, you speak at our conference. There's a sync between both the screens, but for that, FOPA, apologies, and we'll get on with the Exchange for Media Influencer of the Year and the D2C Tycoon of the Year.
Dr. Batra, can I request you to help us felicitate the gentleman for being so kind and joining us today here? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Adam Gerhart.